David Hahn was born in 1976 in a quiet suburb of Detroit, Michigan. As a kid, David wasn't into baseball or video games. He was into science, deeply, passionately, obsessively. By the time he was 10, he had already memorized entire chemistry books. At 12, he was conducting home experiments in his bedroom. Not vinegar and baking soda volcanoes, but real chemical reactions with real consequences. By 14, he had built a makeshift laboratory in the basement. When his parents grew concerned, after a small explosion blackened the walls, he moved it to the backyard shed, a tiny wooden structure just big enough to hold his workbench, a microscope, a shelf of chemicals, and a growing sense of purpose. Then he discovered radioactivity. It was a single paragraph in a science book that lit the spark. The concept that certain materials, invisible to the eye, could release energy powerful enough to fuel cities or destroy them. David didn't see danger. He saw a challenge, so he made a decision. He would build a nuclear reactor, not in theory, not on paper, but a real functioning reactor in his shed, powered by real radioactive material. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us so much to keep bringing this type of content. Now let's head back. He began writing letters to nuclear agencies, pretending to be a high school science teacher. He asked detailed questions about isotopes, shielding, and fuel sources. He contacted the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And somehow, they answered. David figured out that certain consumer products, old clocks, smoke detectors, camping lanterns, all contained trace amounts of radioactive elements. So he began collecting them. He bought hundreds of smoke alarms to extract americium. He salvaged thorium from lantern mantles, tritium from gun sights, and radium from antique clocks. His shed became a mosaic of half-disassembled household items, glowing softly under a Geiger counter. Piece by piece, he gathered what he needed. He constructed a rudimentary neutron source, essentially a small particle accelerator, and began bombarding materials in the hopes of initiating a kind of chain reaction. It wasn't a reactor in the industrial sense, but it was real and dangerous. His makeshift experiment began emitting radiation levels over 1,000 times higher than background levels. Neighbors started noticing odd behavior. David digging holes at night, strange lights flickering in the shed, birds avoiding the backyard altogether. His stepmother, increasingly concerned, called the police after catching him placing a suspicious box in the trunk of his car. That box contained radioactive material. When the police arrived, they found more than they bargained for. The fire department was called, then the FBI, and eventually the Environmental Protection Agency. In radiation suits, they cordoned off the area, sealed the shed, and classified it as a hazardous waste site. David, now 17, was taken in for questioning. His reactor was dismantled, boxed up, and buried in the Utah desert alongside industrial nuclear waste. He had come dangerously close to creating a real neutron emitter, not enough to cause a meltdown, but enough to risk contamination. One physicist later described it as a reactor in embryo. And what became of David? He was never charged with a crime. His youth and obvious obsession were seen as mitigating factors. He went to college briefly, served in the Navy, and later struggled with mental health and substance issues. In 2016, he died of alcohol poisoning at the age of 39, alone, quietly, and mostly forgotten by the world that once stared wide-eyed at the radioactive teenager. But for a brief, surreal moment in American history, a 15-year-old boy, armed with curiosity, a Boy Scout badge, and parts from junkyard electronics, built a nearly functional nuclear experiment in a wooden shed behind his house.